A man in his early 70s once told me he had started holding his phone a little farther away at night. Not because anything was wrong, he said, just one of those age things. In the same conversation, he mentioned walking into rooms and forgetting why he was there. Again, nothing serious. Just getting older. I'm Dr. Warren Hung. If you want clear, medically grounded explanations like this without exaggeration or confusion, consider subscribing. It helps you keep learning in a way that actually makes sense. What that patient described is something I hear often. The important detail is not the symptoms themselves, it's how they're interpreted. Vision changes and memory lapses are usually treated as separate, expected parts of aging. Something to notice, maybe joke about, but not question too deeply. And because they develop slowly, they rarely feel urgent. But that assumption is incomplete. These changes rarely begin at the moment you notice them. They build quietly, often over years, and much of that process happens during periods when you are not paying attention, especially at night. During sleep, your body is not simply resting. It is actively managing systems that affect both how you see and how you think. Blood flow is redistributed. Cellular repair processes increase. Waste products in the brain are cleared through a system often referred to as the glymphatic system. In the eyes, the retina, which is a highly active layer of nerve tissue, continues to rely on steady oxygen and nutrient delivery, even while you sleep. When these processes are supported, the system maintains itself more effectively. When they are not, small inefficiencies begin to accumulate. And this is where the misunderstanding becomes important. Because most people do not connect what they consume in the evening or what they lack with what happens overnight inside these systems. The idea that nutrition timing could influence how the brain clears waste or how the retina handles oxidative stress is not something people usually think about. Instead, the pattern looks harmless. Vision, slightly less sharp in low light. More reliance on brighter screens. Occasional difficulty recalling names or small details. Each one feels manageable on its own. But underneath, there are shared mechanisms beginning to shift. Reduced microcirculation means less efficient delivery of oxygen to both brain tissue and the retina. Increased oxidative stress, essentially the buildup of unstable molecules that can damage cells, affects delicate structures in the eyes and neurons in the brain. Low-grade inflammation, which becomes more common with age and metabolic conditions, can interfere with signaling pathways involved in memory and visual processing. These are not sudden events, they are slow-moving processes. And importantly, they are not entirely passive. Your body does not stop responding to input just because it is nighttime. In fact, in some ways, it becomes more selective. With fewer competing demands, no digestion of large meals, no constant sensory overload, repair and regulation systems can work more efficiently. This creates a window. A window where certain compounds, especially those that support blood flow, reduce oxidative stress, and provide key micronutrients, may be used more effectively by the body. That does not mean you can fix vision or memory overnight. That would not be medically accurate. But it does mean that what you provide your body before sleep can influence how well these systems maintain themselves over time. And this is where small, consistent choices begin to matter more than people expect. Because the same person who assumes this is just aging is often also missing the opportunity to support the very systems that are quietly changing. In clinical practice, the difference is rarely one dramatic intervention. It is usually a pattern, repeated under support of key systems, or consistent, moderate support that helps maintain function longer. So instead of asking, why is this happening now? A more useful question is, what has been happening quietly over time? And once you start looking at it that way, the next step becomes clearer. There are specific nutrients known to support retinal health, cerebral blood flow, antioxidant balance, inflammatory regulation. And some of the simplest ways to deliver them without adding complexity or strain are through combinations that the body can absorb efficiently. That's where these 4 juices come in. Not as a cure, not as a guarantee, but as a practical way to support systems that are already working every night whether you notice them or not. But to understand why these specific combinations matter, you first need to see how closely vision and memory are actually connected beneath the surface. A pattern I see in clinic is this. Someone comes in to talk about their eyes, usually trouble with clarity at night, or needing more light to read. Halfway through the conversation, almost as an aside, they mention something else. Names taking longer to come back, walking into a room and pausing, misplacing something simple. They don't connect the two, but they often share the same underlying shifts. The eye and the brain are not separate systems in the way most people think. The retina, the part of the eye responsible for detecting light, is actually a layer of neural tissue. It is, in many ways, an extension of the brain itself. That means it depends on many of the same conditions: stable blood flow, controlled inflammation, and protection from oxidative stress. When those conditions begin to change, both systems tend to show it sometimes in subtle ways first. One of the key factors is microcirculation, which simply means the flow of blood through the smallest vessels in the body. These vessels deliver oxygen and nutrients to highly active tissues like the retina and the hippocampus, the part of the brain involved in forming and retrieving memories. With age, and especially in people with conditions like hypertension, insulin resistance, or high cholesterol, this microcirculation becomes less efficient. The vessels may narrow slightly. The lining of the vessels may become less responsive. Blood flow may not adjust as quickly as it used to. The result is not a sudden loss of function, it is a gradual decline in efficiency. In the eyes, that may look like slower adjustment between light and dark, reduced contrast sensitivity, more visual fatigue by the end of the day. In the brain, it may show up as slower recall, difficulty concentrating for longer periods, increased mental fatigue. These are often dismissed as minor, but they are signals of the same underlying shift. Another shared mechanism is oxidative stress. This refers to the accumulation of unstable molecules, often called free radicals, that can damage cells over time. Both the retina and the brain are especially vulnerable to this kind of stress because they use a large amount of energy and oxygen relative to their size. In the retina, oxidative stress can affect the cells responsible for detecting light and color. In the brain, it can interfere with communication between neurons and gradually affect memory processes. Your body has natural defenses against this. It uses antioxidants, compounds that help neutralize these unstable molecules. But over time, especially with poor diet, low intake of certain nutrients, or chronic metabolic stress, that balance can shift. When it does, damage accumulates slowly. Inflammation is another piece of the puzzle. Not the kind you feel immediately, like swelling after an injury, but low-grade, chronic inflammation. This type of inflammation can quietly affect blood vessels, interfere with signaling pathways in the brain, and contribute to structural changes in both neural and visual systems. This is why people with metabolic conditions such as type 2 diabetes often experience both visual complications and cognitive changes over time. The systems are connected through shared vulnerabilities. I remember a patient in his late 60s who came in concerned about blurrier evenings. He had started increasing the brightness on all his devices. During the conversation, he also mentioned that he was relying more on written reminders than before. Nothing dramatic, just small adjustments. When we looked more closely, his blood sugar levels had been slightly elevated for years, not high enough to cause immediate alarm, but enough to affect microcirculation and increase oxidative stress over time. And this illustrates something important about how the body works. These changes are rarely isolated. They tend to move together, influenced by the same internal environment. What makes this more relevant is that the early stages are often quiet. There is no clear moment where something goes wrong. Instead, the system becomes less resilient, less efficient, more sensitive to small imbalances. That is why the timing of support matters. During the day, your body is managing multiple competing demands: movement, digestion, stress responses, constant sensory input. At night, many of those demands decrease. This allows certain processes to become more active, including repair, regulation, and in the brain, the clearing of metabolic waste. If the body has the right materials available, adequate nutrients, compounds that support blood flow, molecules that help manage oxidative stress, it can use that window more effectively. If it does not, the system continues to operate, but with less support. So instead of thinking about vision and memory as separate concerns, it is more accurate to see them as part of the same network, one that depends heavily on circulation, cellular protection, and metabolic stability. And once you understand that connection, the next step becomes more practical. Because there are specific combinations of nutrients that can support these shared mechanisms, especially when delivered in forms the body can absorb and use efficiently. That is where the four juices come in. Each one targets a slightly different aspect of this system: blood flow, antioxidant support, inflammation control, and cellular protection, while still fitting into a simple, manageable routine. And once you see how each one works, the pattern becomes much clearer. Now that you understand how closely the eyes and brain are connected, we can look at this more practically. There is no single drink that can restore vision or memory on its own. That would not be medically accurate. What you can do is support the systems. Those functions depend on circulation, oxidative balance, and cellular protection using combinations of nutrients your body can recognize and use. The goal here is not intensity, it is consistency and support. These 4 juices are built around that idea. 1. Beetroot juice supporting blood flow to the brain and eyes. Beetroot is one of the most studied foods when it comes to circulation. It contains natural compounds called nitrates, which the body can convert into nitric oxide. Nitric oxide helps blood vessels relax and widen slightly, improving blood flow, especially in smaller vessels. This matters for both the retina, which depends on steady oxygen delivery, the brain, where areas involved in memory are sensitive to changes in circulation. In older adults, reduced nitric oxide availability is common. That contributes to stiffer blood vessels and less efficient microcirculation. Research has shown that dietary nitrates can increase blood flow in certain regions of the brain. For example, studies using imaging techniques have observed improved perfusion in frontal brain areas after nitrate-rich meals. While this does not boost memory directly, it supports the environment memory depends on. For vision, better circulation helps maintain the function of light-sensitive cells and supports the health of retinal tissue over time. Who may benefit most? Individuals with reduced physical activity, people with early signs of vascular stiffness, those with mild hypertension. Practical use: a small glass in the evening. Not excessively concentrated. Ideally without added sugar. Caution: people on certain blood pressure medications should monitor response. Can temporarily change urine color, which is harmless but often unexpected. 2. Carrot and orange juice, supporting retinal function and antioxidant defense. Carrots are known for their content of beta-carotene, which the body can convert into vitamin A. Vitamin A plays a direct role in the retina, particularly in the cells responsible for low-light vision. This is one reason difficulty seeing in dim environments can sometimes be linked to low intake of vitamin A-related nutrients. Oranges add another layer through vitamin C, which supports antioxidant defenses and helps protect delicate tissues from oxidative stress. Together, this combination supports retinal cell function, protection against oxidative damage, general tissue repair processes. The retina is especially vulnerable because it is constantly exposed to light and uses a significant amount of oxygen. That combination increases the need for protective compounds. Large population studies, including data from long-term cohorts like NHANES, have shown associations between higher intake of antioxidant-rich foods and better maintenance of visual function over time. These are associations, not guarantees, but they align with known biological mechanisms. Who may benefit most? Individuals experiencing increased light sensitivity or night vision difficulty, people with low vegetable intake, those exposed to prolonged screen use. Practical use: balanced mixture, not overly sweet, ideally paired with a small amount of dietary fat earlier in the day to support absorption of fat-soluble nutrients. Caution: avoid excessive intake, especially in juice form, due to natural sugars. Not a replacement for a balanced diet. 3. Blueberry juice supporting memory and neuronal communication. Blueberries contain compounds called anthocyanins, which are part of a broader group known as flavonoids. These compounds have been studied for their potential role in supporting communication between neurons, reducing oxidative stress in brain tissue, improving certain aspects of cognitive function in aging populations. Some randomized controlled trials have suggested modest improvements in memory tasks in older adults consuming blueberry-derived products over time. These effects are not dramatic, but they are consistent with the idea of long-term support rather than immediate change. From a physiological perspective, anthocyanins may influence signaling pathways involved in learning and memory, help protect neurons from cumulative stress, support vascular function in the brain. Because memory relies heavily on the integrity of neuronal networks, protecting those networks matters more over time than any short-term intervention. There is also some evidence that these compounds may support eye health by contributing to vascular stability and reducing oxidative stress in retinal tissues. Who may benefit most? Individuals noticing mild memory slowing, people with high cognitive demand or stress, older adults aiming to maintain function. Practical use: diluted juice or blended form, consistent intake rather than occasional use. Caution: choose low sugar or unsweetened versions when possible. Number 4, pomegranate juice supporting vascular health and inflammation control. Pomegranate contains polyphenols, including compounds such as punicolagens, which have been studied for their antioxidant and anti-inflammatory properties. These compounds may support endothelial function, the inner lining of blood vessels, reduction of oxidative stress, modulation of inflammatory pathways. Healthy endothelial function is essential for maintaining proper blood flow. When this system becomes less efficient, both the brain and eyes are affected. There is research suggesting that pomegranate consumption may improve markers of vascular health, including blood flow dynamics. Some studies have also observed reduced oxidative markers with regular intake. Again, these are supportive effects, not direct treatments, but they contribute to a more stable internal environment. For the brain, that means more consistent nutrient delivery, better support for cognitive processes. For the eyes, it supports vascular integrity, protection against long-term stress. Who may benefit most? Individuals with early cardiovascular risk factors, people with elevated oxidative stress, those looking to support long-term vascular health. Practical use: small portions. Avoid highly concentrated or sweetened versions. Caution: may interact with certain medications, similar to grapefruit in some cases. Should be used with awareness in individuals on specific treatments, bringing these together. Each of these juices targets a different part of the same system: beetroot circulation, carrot and orange retinal function and antioxidant support, blueberry neuronal communication and protection, pomegranate vascular health and inflammation. They are not interchangeable, and they are not meant to replace whole foods or medical care. What they offer is a way to consistently support multiple mechanisms at once, using combinations your body can process efficiently. And when used thoughtfully, they can fit into a routine that aligns with how your body actually works, especially during periods when repair and regulation are more active. But timing and context change how effective that support actually is, and this is where many people unintentionally reduce the benefit without realizing it. There is a common assumption that nutrients work the same way no matter when you consume them. From a basic nutritional standpoint, that is partly true. Your body will still absorb vitamins, minerals, and other compounds throughout the day. But what changes is how those nutrients are used and what systems are most active at the time. This is where evening timing becomes relevant, not because it creates a dramatic effect overnight, but because it aligns with processes that are already happening. At night, several important shifts occur. First, the body begins to move away from active digestion and external demands. Energy that would normally be used for movement, constant sensory processing, and large meals becomes available for maintenance and regulation. Second, in the brain, a process often referred to as the glymphatic system becomes more active. This system helps clear metabolic waste products that accumulate during the day. It relies on fluid movement through brain tissue, supported by stable circulation and proper cellular function. Third, hormone patterns change. Levels of certain stress-related hormones decrease, while others involved in repair and regulation increase. This creates an environment that is more favorable for recovery processes. None of this is visible while you sleep, but it is continuous. Now, consider what happens if the body has limited support during that window. If circulation is already reduced, if oxidative stress is elevated, or if inflammation is present, the system still functions, but less efficiently. Over time, that reduced efficiency contributes to the gradual changes people notice later. This is why timing becomes practical. Providing supportive nutrients in the evening does not force the body to repair faster. What it can do is reduce friction inside systems that are already trying to maintain themselves. For example, if nitric oxide availability is supported, blood vessels may respond more effectively, improving microcirculation during the night. If antioxidant compounds are available, they may help neutralize oxidative stress as repair processes occur. If anti-inflammatory compounds are present, they may contribute to a more stable internal environment. Again, these are supportive effects. They do not replace underlying health conditions or override larger risk factors, but they influence how well the system operates over time. Where people often get this wrong. The intention to do something healthy at night is common. The problem is how it is done. One of the most frequent mistakes is excess sugar intake in the evening, even when it comes from natural sources. Large amounts of fruit juice, especially concentrated or sweetened versions, can lead to spikes in blood glucose. For individuals with insulin resistance or reduced metabolic flexibility, this can interfere with the very processes you are trying to support. Instead of creating a stable environment, it introduces variability. Another issue is volume. More is not better in this context. A large intake before sleep can disrupt digestion, affect sleep quality, reduce the effectiveness of overnight processes. The goal is not to load the system, it is to support it without adding stress. Timing also matters relative to meals. Consuming these juices immediately after a heavy dinner may limit how effectively certain compounds are used, simply because digestion is already working at capacity. A small gap allowing the body to transition can make the intake more aligned with nighttime physiology. What "while you sleep" actually means. The phrase suggests something active happening during sleep, and that part is true. But it does not mean the juices are directly repairing vision or memory in a targeted way overnight. What it means, more accurately, is this. You are supporting systems that operate during sleep, including circulation, cellular repair, oxidative balance, waste clearance in the brain. Over time, better support of these systems contributes to more stable function, slower decline, improved resilience. That is a different expectation than a quick fix. A simple way to apply this. Instead of treating these juices as isolated actions, it is more useful to think in terms of routine. A simple evening structure might look like a balanced dinner, not overly heavy or high in refined sugars. A short gap to allow digestion to settle. A small portion of one of the juices, chosen based on your needs. Consistent timing across days. This creates predictability for the body. And predictability helps biological systems function more efficiently. For example, someone focused on circulation may rotate in beetroot. Someone concerned about visual strain may lean toward carrot-based combinations. Someone noticing cognitive fatigue may include blueberry more consistently. The key is not complexity, it is alignment. Why this matters more over time. You are not trying to create a visible change in a few days. You are influencing processes that operate quietly, accumulate over months and years, determine how well systems hold up with age. This is why small, repeated inputs matter more than occasional large efforts. And this is also why misunderstanding timing can reduce the benefit. Because when the same supportive compounds are used at the wrong moment or in the wrong way, they may still be helpful, but not as effective as they could be. So the goal becomes clearer. Not just what you use, but when and how you use it. And once this is structured into something simple and repeatable, it becomes much easier to maintain without overthinking it. Now, the goal is not to add more information. It is to make what you already understand usable. Because the difference between knowing something and benefiting from it is usually structure. Most people approach this in fragments. One juice today, something different next week. No clear pattern, no way to tell what is actually helping. The body does not respond well to inconsistency. What it responds to is repeated, moderate support over time. So instead of thinking in terms of individual foods or occasional effort, it helps to organize this into a simple system you can follow without strain. A practical daily framework. You can think of this in 3 parts: support, timing, and awareness. 1. Support what you use. Choose from the 4 juices based on what you are trying to support. Circulation, beetroot. Retinal function, carrot and orange. Cognitive support, blueberry. Vascular and inflammatory balance, pomegranate. You do not need all 4 every day. Rotation is often more practical and easier to maintain. 2. Timing. When you use it, keep it consistent. Evening intake. Moderate portion. Not immediately after a heavy meal. Not too close to lying down. If it affects comfort, this aligns the intake with the period when the body is more focused on internal regulation. 3. Awareness. What you notice. This is often the missing piece. Instead of looking for dramatic change, pay attention to how your eyes feel in lower light, whether visual fatigue builds more slowly or quickly, how easily you recall small details, whether mental fatigue appears earlier in the day. These are subtle signals, but they are more useful than waiting for something obvious. What to adjust over time. If you notice persistent fatigue, increasing difficulty with clarity or recall, changes that feel faster than expected, that is not something to ignore. It is a signal to review your overall nutrition, look at sleep quality, consider medical evaluation if needed. These juices are supportive, not diagnostic tools and not treatments. They work best when they are part of a broader pattern that includes stable blood pressure, controlled blood sugar, adequate sleep, balanced diet. What this does and what it doesn't do. It is important to stay clear on expectations. This approach supports circulation, helps manage oxidative stress, contributes to a more stable internal environment. It does not reverse established disease, replace medical treatment, guarantee preservation of vision or memory. What it can do is help reduce the gap between how the body is functioning and how well it could be supported. And over time, that difference matters. A clinical perspective. In practice, the people who maintain function longer are rarely the ones who rely on a single intervention. They are the ones who make small adjustments early, stay consistent, respond to changes instead of ignoring them. There is no clear moment where everything changes. There is a pattern, and that pattern can either work with the body or against it. What you can do starting today. Keep it simple. Choose one juice that fits your current concern. Use it consistently in the evening. Keep portions moderate. Avoid turning it into something overly sweet or excessive. Then observe. Not for a dramatic result, but for direction. Because the earlier you notice patterns, the easier they are to influence. If any part of this sounded familiar, whether it's vision changes, memory shifts, or simple fatigue, write it in the comments. It helps identify what people are actually experiencing and what needs to be explained more clearly next. If you want more explanations like this, grounded in how the body actually works, consider subscribing so you can keep building that understanding over time. What you notice early is often what gives you the most control later.